Susan Boyle, a name synonymous with triumph and the power of the human spirit. But behind her soaring voice lies a life of unexpected struggles. Misdiagnosed from birth, Susan faced an uphill battle against health challenges. Her rise to fame brought both adulation and painful intrusions into her private world. Family tensions, personal battles, and a love story gone awry have all played their part in shaping the woman we know today. Join us as we explore the untold tragic side of Susan Boyle's extraordinary journey. Susan Boyle's life has been one of extraordinary challenges and profound resilience. Known for her breakout performance on Britain's Got Talent, Boyle's talent captivated audiences worldwide. But behind her incredible voice and public success, there is a more complex and painful story. One marked by misdiagnosis, health struggles, family hardship, and the unrelenting pressures of growing up in a world that misunderstood her. Her journey reflects not only the triumphs of a woman who defied the odds, but also the struggles of a life that has often been marked by invisible barriers, painful losses, and emotional wounds. This is the story of Susan Boyle beyond the stage, misdiagnosis and the discovery of Asperger's syndrome. For the first 51 years of her life, Susan Boyle was told that the difficulties she experienced were a result of brain damage caused by a lack of oxygen during her birth. This misdiagnosis, compounded by a lack of understanding about learning disabilities, set the course for much of her early life. From an early age, Boyle's social interactions and emotional responses were often seen as signs of a deeper, unseen issue, with many labeling her as different in ways that were not fully understood. It wasn't until 2013 that Boyle finally learned the truth. She did not have brain damage, as was previously believed, but rather Asperger's syndrome, a condition on the autism spectrum. Asperger's syndrome, which is characterized by difficulties in social interaction and nonverbal communication, as well as restrictive and repetitive patterns of behavior and interests, was something Boyle had never been told about before. In a 2014 interview with The Guardian, Boyle described this revelation as a blessing in disguise, as it provided her with much-needed clarity about herself and her behaviors. She admitted feeling a sense of relief, a rare moment of self-acceptance, as she could finally understand her own life and struggles. Before this diagnosis, Boyle had lived in the shadow of an unfair label, one that she now saw as entirely misattributed. She recalled how, for much of her life, she had struggled with social anxiety and misunderstood behaviors, which made her feel isolated and misunderstood. Now, with the diagnosis of Asperger's, she felt more comfortable in her own skin, more aware of why she reacted to situations in ways that others didn't understand. Boyle, like many individuals on the autism spectrum, had always dealt with heightened anxiety in everyday situations. She had a natural, almost intrinsic discomfort with social interactions, which often resulted in misunderstandings with people around her. For many individuals on the spectrum, this heightened anxiety can make routine social interactions feel like insurmountable challenges. Boyle's experience was no different. For decades, she had dealt with this anxiety without ever having a clear explanation of why it affected her so intensely. In hindsight, Boyle realized that these struggles weren't signs of weakness, but were symptoms of a neurological difference that was not widely understood at the time. The revelation brought not only personal clarity, but also a deeper empathy for others who face similar challenges. For Boyle, the diagnosis provided a sense of validation, a way to reclaim her identity after so many years of feeling like an outcast. Boyle also hoped that her diagnosis would help others better understand neurodiversity. In interviews, she expressed a wish that society would develop more compassion for people like her, individuals who may not always conform to societal expectations of behavior, but who still possess incredible talents and unique contributions to make. Through her own experience, Boyle hoped to change the perception of people with Asperger's and create a broader, more accepting society where neurodiversity is acknowledged and celebrated. Her public journey of self-discovery resonated with many, offering a model of self-acceptance and understanding for others on the autism spectrum. Bullying in school, a lifetime of struggle. Before Boyle gained fame, her school years were marred by bullying, which only worsened as she struggled with both Asperger's and undiagnosed epilepsy. School, which should have been a place for learning and growth, became a battleground for Boyle. She later shared with the Daily Mail that her school years were filled with verbal abuse and physical torment. She was relentlessly mocked for being different, often labeled as strange and peculiar by her peers. In one revealing interview, Boyle recalled how cruel comments from classmates would echo through her school halls, each taunt leaving deep scars on her self-esteem. What made her experience even more isolating was the lack of understanding around learning disabilities and conditions like Asperger's. Many of her peers had no idea why she acted in ways that were different from them, which led to even more cruelty. In one instance, Boyle revealed that she was wrongly diagnosed as hyperactive and accused of being overly emotional. But the truth was that Boyle was simply struggling to navigate the social expectations of others while coping with the heightened sensitivity that comes with her condition. This emotional volatility, paired with her struggle to express herself and understand social cues, made her an easy target for bullies. The emotional toll of this period was severe, and Boyle has spoken frequently about how deeply these experiences affected her. She said that being bullied at such a young age had a lasting impact on her confidence. She felt like she was never able to truly fit in, no matter how hard she tried. But despite the cruelty she faced, Boyle exhibited an incredible resilience. Rather than allowing the bullying to destroy her, she chose to focus on her passion for singing, using music as an escape and a source of solace. Epilepsy, a double struggle. In addition to her struggles with Asperger's syndrome and bullying, Boyle also had to contend with epilepsy, a condition that made her already difficult school years even more challenging. Epilepsy, or seizure disorder, is a neurological condition that causes the brain to experience abnormal electrical activity, resulting in recurring seizures. Boyle's seizures were frequent during her school years, further isolating her from her peers. As if the bullying wasn't enough, her medical condition became another source of ridicule. In an interview with the Daily Mail, Boyle revealed that her parents, although protective and loving, were uncertain how to handle her condition. They chose to keep her sheltered, not fully understanding how to navigate her epilepsy. Boyle recounted how her parents referred to her as touchy, a reflection of their confusion about her condition. In those days, epilepsy was poorly understood by both the medical community and the general public. This ignorance contributed to the stigma Boyle faced, both at home and in school. Her medical history was an invisible burden that few people knew how to address. Boyle later remarked that she realized how little knowledge there was about epilepsy at the time, noting that even medical professionals lacked awareness. She recalled how epilepsy was wrongly associated with mental disability, which only added to her sense of being misunderstood and isolated. While epilepsy is now recognized more widely, and public figures such as Elton John and Lil Wayne have used their platforms to raise awareness, Boyle was left to navigate the condition largely alone during her formative years. Family struggles, abuse, and loss. Susan Boyle's relationship with her family was deeply complicated. Although she shared a close bond with her mother, Bridget Boyle, her relationship with her father was marred by the revelation of his own struggles. Boyle later disclosed that her father had a temper, which he often directed at her, although she acknowledged that it was not intentional. She expressed that while her father had a good heart, his behavior during their tumultuous years at home left emotional scars. Boyle's father's anger was likely exacerbated by the trauma he experienced during his time in the military. This complicating factor helped Boyle come to terms with the physical and emotional mistreatment she suffered at home. In addition to this, Boyle's father disapproved of a romantic relationship she had at the age of 25, which further strained their connection. She recalled that her father believed she was too immature to handle a relationship, a sentiment that would echo through much of her adult life. These emotional wounds only deepened as Boyle struggled to find a sense of belonging and acceptance, both within her family and in the wider world. Perhaps the greatest loss in Boyle's life came when her mother passed away in 2007. Bridget Boyle had been Susan's most steadfast supporter throughout her singing journey. Her death left an enormous void in Susan's life, one that was felt more deeply as Susan's fame began to rise. In the months following her mother's death, Boyle admitted that the loneliness she felt was overwhelming. She described the initial numbness following her mother's passing, but it was only after some months had passed that the true weight of the loss hit her. In interviews, Susan spoke of how the loss of her mother left her feeling that a part of her had been taken away. As her mother had always been her most devoted champion, her absence made Boyle question herself and her place in the world. She found herself alone in the world, with only her cat Pebbles for company, a reminder of the profound emotional toll that her mother's passing had taken on her. Susan Boyle's life story is one of resilience, heartache, triumph, and the enduring love of family, particularly the unconditional support of her mother, Bridget Boyle. Throughout her career, Susan has often reflected on the pivotal role her mother played in shaping her journey, especially during moments when she contemplated giving up on her dreams. Despite the immense challenges she faced due to her invisible disabilities, bullying, and societal skepticism, Susan Boyle's story is one of perseverance, a relentless pursuit of her passion for music, and the profound influence of family. Her journey before Britain's Got Talent was not a smooth one, filled with auditions, rejection, and doubt. However, it was also a journey fueled by the unwavering encouragement of her mother, who believed in Susan's extraordinary talent long before the world did. The role of Bridget Boyle, a mother's belief. Bridget Boyle was not just a mother to Susan. She was a steadfast champion of her daughter's talent from the very beginning. Susan often credits her mother with providing the emotional support and belief that kept her going through the darkest of times. From an early age, Susan's passion for music was clear, and while she faced significant obstacles, ranging from bullying to medical struggles, her mother's faith in her remained unshaken. Susan has shared in numerous interviews that it was Bridget's belief in her potential that allowed her to continue pursuing her dreams, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Bridget Boyle gave birth to Susan at the age of 47, making her the youngest of 9 children. The dynamics of being the youngest, coupled with Susan's undiagnosed disabilities, later revealed to be Asperger's syndrome, created a particularly strong bond between mother and daughter. This proximity, however, was not without its challenges. Bridget, like many mothers of children with disabilities, often felt anxiety about Susan's future, particularly whether she would be able to live independently. Susan herself has spoken about the anxiety they both shared, and how the weight of those fears sometimes overshadowed their otherwise close relationship. One of the most poignant moments in Susan's reflection on her relationship with her mother was her mention of the pivotal promise she made to Bridget. Before Susan ever stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent, she had auditioned for multiple talent shows but had faced repeated rejections. After several failed attempts, there came a moment where Susan felt like giving up entirely. It was during one of these moments of doubt that her mother's unwavering faith became the anchor that kept her grounded. In a 2011 interview with The Mirror, Susan disclosed, "Everybody goes through the phase when they want to give up, and if I had not made a promise to my mother then, I would have." The promise to her mother, to continue pursuing her dreams, was the catalyst that kept her from walking away from her passion. Bridget Boyle, with her constant belief in Susan's abilities, had created a safe space for her daughter, a sanctuary where Susan could hold on to her aspirations despite the discouraging circumstances that seemed to surround her. Music as a lifeline, a safe haven amidst adversity. From an early age, Susan Boyle's love for music was not just a hobby, it was a lifeline. Growing up in a household where singing was an essential part of life, she was encouraged by her parents to participate in musical activities. Music became her escape, her refuge from the harshness of the world outside, particularly during her school years. The local Catholic Church provided a platform for her to express her talent, and she participated in various musical activities within the church community. Here, Susan found a sense of belonging, even if she was often met with skepticism in other areas of her life. The world of music was her bubble, as she described it in a 2019 interview with the Irish News. In the midst of the bullying she endured at school and the invisible struggles she faced due to her undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome, music was the one place where she felt accepted. As Susan herself has said, "Music was my safe haven, my comfort zone, and it was within this space that she could truly be herself." This sense of security and acceptance came largely from her family, particularly her mother. Bridget Boyle was her greatest role model, offering her not only encouragement but also the kind of constructive honesty that kept Susan grounded. In interviews, Susan has reflected on how her mother's support helped her continue in her pursuit of a professional singing career. even when the world around her seemed to doubt her abilities. Susan's path to stardom was not immediate. She auditioned for numerous talent shows, each time facing the discouragement of rejection. At the age of 47, Susan finally had the opportunity to showcase her talent on the Britain's Got Talent stage in 2009, after having auditioned for about 12 other shows without success. It was this audition that would change her life forever. The breakthrough, Britain's Got Talent. The moment Susan Boyle stepped onto the stage of Britain's Got Talent in 2009, the world was about to be introduced to a voice that would captivate millions. With her appearance, an unassuming middle-aged woman with plain clothes and simple mannerisms, the judges and the audience initially dismissed her. There was a perceptible air of skepticism as Boyle introduced herself, and many in the audience openly mocked her before she even began to sing. But when Susan belted out the opening lines of "I Dreamed a Dream" from Les Miserables, it was as if time itself stood still. The transformation was immediate. Her raw, powerful voice stunned the judges and captivated viewers worldwide. This moment marked the beginning of a remarkable journey to stardom. However, despite the overwhelming talent she displayed, Susan faced adversity in the form of laughter and ridicule. The initial reaction from the audience was not applause but mockery. It wasn't until she began singing that the true measure of her talent became apparent. This moment of judgment by the crowd and the subsequent transformation in their reaction sparked a larger conversation about the way society treats individuals who don't conform to typical beauty standards or societal expectations. A The Guardian op-ed piece titled, "It wasn't singer Susan Boyle who was ugly on Britain's Got Talent, so much as our reaction to her," poignantly examined this issue. Susan Boyle's audition became a turning point for how we view the intersection of talent, appearance, and society's biases. Despite the overwhelming public reaction to her audition, Susan's journey was far from easy. The sudden surge in fame was both exhilarating and overwhelming. As she transitioned from a life of relative anonymity to becoming an international sensation, Susan found herself in the center of a media frenzy. The intense press attention, which at first seemed like a dream come true, quickly turned into a nightmare. She was thrust into the public eye, with little time to adjust to the newfound fame. The very thing that had propelled her to stardom, her talent, also became the thing that made it almost impossible for her to leave her home without being mobbed by fans and photographers. The price of fame, mental and emotional struggles. The rapid rise to fame brought with it intense pressure and unforeseen challenges, many of which Susan was ill-prepared for. Susan Boyle openly admitted to struggling with the pressures of fame, and in 2009, she was admitted to the Priory, a mental health facility, after experiencing an emotional breakdown. This moment marked a turning point in her journey, as she confronted the overwhelming anxiety and stress that came with being thrust into the spotlight. In the aftermath of the Britain's Got Talent season finale, where Susan finished as the runner-up, she was reported to have had a heated argument with the show's staff, an incident that resulted in the involvement of police. This moment, though a brief lapse in her usually composed demeanor, highlighted the intense strain Susan was under. Many, including show judge Piers Morgan, acknowledged that no one had ever experienced such a sudden rise to fame, and that the emotional toll it took on her was immense. The Britain's Got Talent producers faced criticism for not providing adequate support for Boyle during this turbulent period. Complaints were lodged with UK media regulator Ofcom, suggesting that Boyle's vulnerability had been overlooked in favor of ratings and spectacle. In interviews, Boyle herself reflected on the lack of care provided by the producers, especially in light of her obvious mental and physical exhaustion. Family tragedy, loss and healing. Amidst the whirlwind of fame, Susan Boyle's personal life was touched by tragedy. In 2015, 8 years after the death of her beloved mother Bridget, Susan suffered another profound loss with the passing of her sister, Bribe, who died from cancer at the age of 73. Bribe had been a vital presence in Susan's life, offering not only emotional support but also honesty that kept her grounded as her fame grew. Susan shared a close bond with Bribe, who had always been there to remind her of her roots and to keep her humble. In the wake of Bribe's passing, Susan took time away from her music career to focus on her family and to grieve in peace. The loss of both her mother and sister was deeply felt, and Susan emphasized the importance of taking time to heal, acknowledging that the intense public scrutiny left little room for private moments of mourning. "I miss her every day," Susan shared, reflecting on the bond she had with her sister. The grief, however, did not prevent her from continuing to create music, and in 2016, Susan released her seventh album, A Wonderful World, a project that featured duets with famous artists like Michael Bolton and Nat King Cole.